It's CC and JT from the CC and JT Amateur Hour, where production values go to die. And today we're wearing our Nevada Author Network. What the Nevada Author Network is a collaboration between the Sierra Arts Foundation, the Sierra Arts Literary Community, and Two More Books, LLC. What we're trying to do with this collaboration is raise the visibility of the fantastic literary artists that live in Northern Nevada, and in this instance, Northern California. So what we're here is we are welcoming with open arms Karen Terrey from Nevada County, California. Boy, they should name that something else. But we are so happy to have you, Karen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell us about what your works are.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I really appreciate the work you guys do,
Thank you.
in creating literary community, and supporting it and getting the word out for people. And that's kind of what I do too. That's my passion and my mission is to just support the literary community. I live in Truckee, and I'm a poet, and I'm also a teacher at Sierra College, and then also in my business that I founded called Tangled Roots Writing, and I work as an editor and a writing coach, and I teach workshops for all genres and all ages, online and in person.
That's so excellent. But one thing that both of us failed to mention is you're not just a poet, but you are the poet laureate, the poet laureate, which is cool. And being a veteran, I have this, probably this fascination with, titles. So tell us how you evolved into becoming the poet laureate of an entire California county, and what that entails. You kind of explained it before, but tell us what that is.
Yeah, so being poet laureate is you can be a city poet laureate, you could be a county, you could be a state, and then there's the U.S., right? And so very exciting. Arthur Z. last week was announced our new U.S. poet laureate, which I'm so excited about. His focus is going to be on translation as a way to understand other cultures. And in general, that's what a poet laureate is for. The role is to be an ambassador for poetry and to bring it to people in your area, and to figure out, what it is that poetry can offer people. So there's a committee in Nevada County Arts Council for our county that does a call for poet laureate nominations, and I was nominated and chosen to be the poet laureate for the Nevada County. That's happened last March. And the county, right, of course, has this geographic challenge because the summit divides our county, and it's quite a challenge to travel between the two, especially in the winter. The highway's often closed or dangerous. And so one of my missions is to try to unite the county even more in literary arts pursuits.
So that actually brings up an interesting question. With the topography, geography, and the weather conditions in the winter. Do you end up doing maybe virtual events now, since that's become so much more common? Because, as you said, the communities can be very spread out and difficult to reach.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And, it's interesting. I am really focusing on in-person if possible. I think people are a little exhausted from so many online events, And so I drive a lot, across the county, and been making the most of the summer and fall and spring, right? We will see as we go. I do have some people who are interested, though, in hybrid events, right? And so I'm absolutely open to that, and I do that in my own business. I work a lot online, so I feel pretty comfortable doing that and adding that to some of our events. And we'll see how it goes over this winter, right? It really varies winter to winter. But
Really?
we have a really good Subaru with 9.3 inches of clearance, so I feel good about that.
You're actually our second or third poet, and I have to say that I admire the technical craft of poetry, because there are wordsmiths and then there are uber wordsmiths, and that probably describes a poet, because those of us who dabble in prose say paragraph to describe a scene, but poets, not so much. They nail it down in 3 or 4 words. Where does that technical craft, since this is a podcast to help writers write, where does that technical craft come?
That's a great question. Just I love to geek out on language, on syntax, on the structure of the sentence. And within a poem, or within an essay, or within short story also. Those are the three genres that I personally really enjoy writing. I work with people in all genres, but those I really love. There's that compression of language in poetry, right? That does so much work. Lucille Clifton, I saw her speak once, and she said that she thinks about and includes every meaning of a word when she uses it. And so it adds these layers to the language and the poetry and what you're saying. I do think, too, that poetry is really made for asking questions. And for me, that's why I'm drawn to it. It's not, we're not presenting answers as much as really figuring out the context for a question. And, what is the really well-phrased question to capture, what we deal with in this world. How can we be humans, in this world? And so, I think that's also why I'm really drawn to Arthur Z and this focus on translation. So last week, Truckee had our first block party for the town. It was last Thursday night, and I was asked to read a poem for it. And I'm mentoring a high school student who's also the intern for the Truckee Cultural District, Alexis Coda. And I reached out to him, and we worked together to translate my poem into Spanish. And then he read it also at the event after I read it on stage to the entire town. And it meant so much. And it really did reach out, I think, and embrace and really validate and recognize the many cultures, right, that we can have in our community. And this is one of the things that poetry is hopefully can do for a poet laureate. But wow, translating and sitting down with this high school student and going word by word and talking about the connotations that I meant when I wrote that line, and then the different ways that could be translated into Spanish, right? And we would have three different possible meanings, and we would have to choose the one that was closest to the connotations that I had been thinking about.
That's amazing. I've taken a little bit of Spanish, and it's always interesting. The syntax changes a bit, and it changes the sentence structure and flow. So the fact that you got to work closely with someone to do that must have been quite an interesting process. But also,
it is, yeah. And he's a wonderful poet himself. So,
mm-hmm.
We spent 3 hours at the library at the Truckee High School just geeking out on words and their meanings, and it was so enjoyable.
Well, and the fact that you're working with students is wonderful, bringing up those next generations. And that links into one of the poems that you provided to us. It was things I wished I'd said to the first graders today at Donner Lake. And I really felt a very strong connection to this. And, being a mother and having gone through the young child phase and watched our kids go through that, it's a very exploratory time in their lives. They're learning about so many new things. Yeah. So do you feel that's a good way to draw young people into poetry, is kind of catch them early? And how did that experience tie into this poem?
Get them early and get them for life.
Yes.
Yes, get them before that they're destroyed by teachers asking them what's the meaning of this poem.
Right.
Yeah.
The pressure to interpret a poem into a meaning, right? Rather than just taking the poem as it is on the page, right? As a thing, like a thing that they can touch and feel and read and hear and taste, right? That's where I like to bring people to that place in poetry when I'm talking about poems. I really try to avoid what does this mean. I mean, what it means is its existence right there. It doesn't have to mean something separate from the experience of this poem for our body, right? And our body as we read it. So, yeah, and I think it is really an opportunity to create positive experiences. Children are so naturally creative. And then to be outdoors in nature, and then bringing in a positive experience with feeling creative with language, and it kind of hopefully can build a confidence for them to be able to carry that on in their world. And I find I teach at Sierra College, I find it with my students there too, trying to develop like a willingness to take the risk of writing as the process of discovery rather than sitting down and thinking, what is the shape and the ending and the purpose and meaning of this thing going to be before I even start writing, because we really discover, I think, as we write. And so I could go on and on about that.
No, that's fine.
It's
That's fine.
fascinating.
It is fascinating. And as Cece said, you did send some very fascinating. And one thing, and we might as well just get the elephant in the room out of the way, is you address the current political situation in our country. And, let's be frank, from what we've seen in current events, that takes courage. That takes a level of courage, because there are those keyboard warriors that are always going to want pushback just for the sake of pushing back. Where do you find that bravery? Where do you find that courage to put it out there in the room and saying, hey, look at this?
Yes, and thanks for asking that. It's something I've been working on. I really have since last January. In some ways, it's very discouraging, I think, for artists and writers. And you have to find your way through and back in, to the creative work. And I couldn't just keep writing about, I don't know, nature, while there's this huge elephant in the room, right? And what's interesting to me is, how do we continue living and finding joy and finding our own fulfillment in our lives and making a difference and doing what matters for other people, and the context, capturing that context while you're at Donner Lake working with these first graders, and it's just really a beautiful experience. But that other stuff is happening at the same time, and I will read that poem, and you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, please.
Example. And then, but I'll say, I've been studying a lot of Arthur Z, and he talks about trying to layer the different moments in the world that are happening simultaneously within one poem. So there's all these different worlds at the same then, right? That same moment at the same then. And that happens in his poem. They're less narrative. They seem to be more of a lyric structure. Mine here's a little more narrative, but it's trying to layer that experience over these other experiences. So this was after this summer in June. I had this amazing opportunity. CELS, which is our expeditionary school here in Truckee, the first graders camp out at Donner Lake State Memorial Park there, and then the next morning they do some teaching and learning, and they asked me to come out and take them on a little nature hike to Donner Lake and write some poetry. So I was so moved by the teachers and the parents, their dedication to making this experience for the kids, and then also the kids they were so earnest, and so excited about what was around them and trying to write poems. So this is the poem I wrote after that day. It's called Things I Wish I'd Said to the first graders today at Donner Lake. A girl writes one line. She asks a tree, "What's up?" She writes what the tree says back. I wish I'd said that these hovering parents and teachers here won't cut your lunch budget. They won't call you a freeloader of the system as you look up. Ask me how to write chaste, how to write mosquito. I'm ready now to read my poem. Can I go next? One boy shows me his quiet sentence. I saw a bat. Together we spell. It chases a mosquito. A whole story from a night walk with the ranger. I see you, slack-mouthed one, hanging back until you sit on a rock to write, then focused. I wish I'd said, don't internalize vitriol against you, making heartbreak from the slaying of expectations. I wouldn't mention the MIT class president banned from walking her graduation, the congressional aide handcuffed by icemen, the family of 5 tied with twisties. What does a 5-year-old look like in handcuffs? Wait, I have more to write, one says quickly. What we are doing here today, holding back a bleeding nose, listening to a sobbing child heave his thin shoulders, waiting in the campground bathroom for you to finish peeing. We want to wrap our arms around your bodies so you can imagine a hopeful world. We want you to carry our tired imaginations forward like staged rocket boosters. Our beaten minds see our own lost childhoods in your chatter, your shouting, your choice of pencil, how you shade by pushing it across your drawing of a bat, a mosquito, a tree, how you look out over green water of the lake to wonder out loud about the trout's world. Beneath what we can't see, can't know.
That's great. I just love that poem.
That's excellent. I could hear you do that like 2 or 3 more times, and I'd hear something. I'd hear and think something different, which is the strength of poetry. Because you said the words, the multiple interpretation of a single word lends to different interpretations of the entire experience.
It does, yeah, and it does. It layers the experience of the poem, right? And
Exactly.
yeah, and so it's a poem that I feel there's some ugly moments happening in the world, while at the same time we're at this lake, and our experience today as citizens, right, is that we're experiencing all these at the same time, and it's quite a challenge.
And as you were reading it, I was thinking about the performative nature of poetry as well, because if we read a poem to ourselves, I obviously mentally stress different words than you chose to as the poet yourself. How much importance do you think there is to the public performance of poetry?
Yeah, I think, first of all, in public performance, you're often reading to people who wouldn't otherwise read a poem. So
Very
you
true.
really are expanding that audience, because you get the friends of the writers and readers coming too, right? The family members. You get the random person who didn't know there was a poetry event happening there, and so they're suffering through this reading of poetry, but they might be moved. So that's really nice. I'm really excited that I'm working with Alibi Brew House in Truckee, and we just are set up. Starting in November, we're doing a second Thursday open mic, which I'm so excited about. It's from 6 to 7:30 here in Truckee, and then I'm going to have some mirroring these open mics over in Nevada City and Grass Valley as well over the next year, so that everyone in the county can participate in this open mic series. But there's also an experience of, I use open mics a lot. I really enjoy them as a way to test out a new poem. And as I read it, I work on it. Reading it out loud to yourself as you're writing a poem is a really good process. And then you read it to the audience, and you can feel the flat spots, You can feel, I literally have edited and cut sections at the mic on stage when I'm reading poems. I'm like, oh my God, this is way too long. I've got to save these people. You can feel that thing in the audience when everyone is suddenly just quiet. They're kind of like hanging on what you're saying, and that's really, it's so validating. I can't remember who said it, but there's 3 people involved in writing a poem. There's the poet who's writing the poem. In the poem, there's a speaker, usually. Not always. Oftentimes, though, there's a speaker. Like when we read that poem, we hear someone in our head talking, right? And then there's the third person is the audience, the person listening or reading the poem. And a poem is really complete when it has an audience.
It's fascinating. Oh, it's just fascinating. Okay, this has been wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. Before we let you go, and we really don't want to, but before we let you go, tell us about do you have any upcoming published works? Do you have, you did mention your public performances, but do you have any published works coming out that we should keep an eye out for?
Thank you so much. Yes, so my book, Bite and Blood, is available at local bookstores. It's from Finishing Line Press, and I'm currently working on a new manuscript of poems, which is going to be a full-length manuscript, and been working on it for a while, and so I'm forcing myself to just make this process come together this fall, so that's been really exciting. Also, I do have an event tomorrow in Nevada City. There's events, happening throughout the county, all these different things. I do want to say I love working with the library, and so at the Truckee Library, I have an ongoing monthly memoir writing workshop, actually, that's been really fun for all ages. So, and continuing to work on new poems. So I'll say soon.
Totally understood. We all have self-imposed deadlines, but sometimes there are actual deadlines that you're trying to reach.
Yeah.
It can be a challenge.
Yeah.
So, where can we find you on the internet?
Yes, so the best place would be my website. And if you just Google Tangled Roots Writing, you'll find my website. I have a blog there where I'm blogging twice a month on different new events and things that are happening. It's a really good place to stay connected and find out about other writers and things. I have a Facebook page as well, and Karen Terrey, and also Tangled Roots Writing. So those are probably the best ways.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Unless you have any other questions?
No,
boy,
I just wanted to thank you for the
Yeah.
work that you're doing because, as you said, it takes a community. And I think as Poet Laureate, it's a very important part of bringing that community together. So thank you. We appreciate you doing that, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you so much, you guys. It's been really an honor.
No, the honor is certainly ours. So we thank Karen Terrey, Poet Laureate of Nevada County in California, for joining us here on the Nevada Author Network, which is, again, a collaboration between the Sierra Arts Foundation, the Sierra Arts Literary Community, and Two More Books LLC to raise the visibility of the fantastic artists like Karen who live in our area. Really, check us out. Check out the webpage. Go to twomoorebooks.com, and you can see this and many more podcasts and contacts of really the great writers that we have in Northern Nevada. One last time. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.